Pac-Man World 3 is a video game. Released in 2005, it was meant to celebrate Pac-Man's 25th anniversary, like Pac-Man World 1 did for his 20th, and Pac-Man Party did for his 30th. I like this game. It also has problems. A lot of problems. Objectively, it's downright bad. Recently, I got in a conversation with someone else who brought up this game. I was asked for my opinion, and I have a lot to say.
Those things are scary. Can I go home now?
Yes, they are. No, you can't.
Meanie.
Alright. Let's start with the overlying issues the game has. The first and most obvious is the combat. There are a small variety of enemies, and most, not all, can be defeated by spamming punch. This isn't what you'll be doing most of the time, because the tactic the most common enemy type will use on you is run away and spam gun. As such, most of the combat is jumping around and performing ground pounds, hoping they don't hit you for being a moving target and all. There are a few enemies that have an absurd amount of health, requiring you to just wail on them for long periods of time. They give you access to multiple different combat-related power-ups, but what you will find is combat is so easy that searching these out isn't necessary. The only extra power pellet that has world-related applications is the electroshock power pellet, and sort of chrome, but not really. Spectral monsters are uniquely annoying to fight, but do require platforming in a sense, so they are also the most complex. The way they work is they spawn from a portal at some point in a level and need to be eaten after eating a power pellet. These power pellets spawn somewhere in the world and respawn on a short timer after use. These encounters are not spaced out well, as for the most part a single level will have 1 or 2 spectral monster encounters, and the necessary power-up to defeat them will be obviously located, though there are exceptions that make finding the necessary power-up interesting. Most of the encounters with spectral monsters are in 3 stages. Level 3, Spectral Cliffs, Level 5, Spectral Valley, and Level 14, Spectral Zenith. These levels lack conventional enemies given their location, so they compensate with spectral monster encounters. The way they play out is you'll do platforming for a few minutes until you are then interrupted by an encounter. Do more platforming for a few more minutes and then repeat. They are so prominent in these stages uniquely that it becomes monotonous, even though these levels also have the most complex encounters with them.
Ah, ain't these chaps just the cutest? See them scamper, little legs all skittering. Can you bring me a little one for a pet?
My growing respect for you, Clyde, doesn't preclude my pointing out that sometimes you're just plain weird.
A second problem is the difficulty. The game is impressively easy. The game's structure is level-based, a total of 15 levels taking place one after another in a story-based progression. If you ever start a new game, you'll have the choice of being on easy or normal. No other difficulties exist. To the best of my knowledge, the only difference between these two is easy mode starts you with 6 lives, and normal starts you with 3. The general level design is pretty basic. A path forward will be presented to you, you go down it, activate a switch, move on. Occasionally a second path you can't do anything with at the time will be presented. Occasionally you'll be given an inventory item you'll need to transport to another location. Sometimes you'll need to double back, but for the most part it's straightforward. The path will occasionally be blocked off and enemies introduced you to defeat, Devil May Cry style. You beat them to push forward. There aren't any puzzles too deep in this game. It generally relies on navigation and platforming execution. The most it branches out with navigation would be in Level 4 Gogeka Central, where you have multiple sections of the level separating off from the center point, that you can do in any order. The most actual platforming execution this game will demand is in level 14, the Spectral Zenith, which will present platforms that disappear after being stepped on, with platforms that appear when close by to create scenarios where Pac-Man doesn't know what he needs to do before he starts doing it. Overall, it has fairly standard, easy 3D platforming level design. For the most part, you should never be missing a jump unless the control scheme messes up somehow. Pac-Man's controls in of themselves are very solid. The only issues there being that his wall jump sometimes doesn't work, and him grabbing onto ledges can sometimes fail. The camera is better than most 3D platforming cameras of its time, but it can still get caught on walls and requires some manipulation by the player. The presence of health and extra lives are excessive, but if you ever run out, you will be forced to continue the game at the beginning of the level you died on with 3 lives. The game will sort of punish you in that way. Something new in this game are the playable ghosts, Pinky and Clyde, or Blinky, because for whatever reason the World games got Blinky and Clyde mixed up. These ghosts cannot interact with any switches or collect any collectibles. You get Pinky after level 3 and she works like this. Collect a charge that's located somewhere, use it to make a hidden platform solid, and you're done. You can only ever hold 3 charges at once for a given location. There are no instances where Pinky must engage with enemies, though if she did and died, you could just resummon her without any consequence. If she needs to solidify more than 3 objects, she will undo the oldest platform she solidified. This is necessary a few times throughout the game, though the deepest this ever gets is in level 7 Ancient Catacombs. You're required to solidify an object that blocks the exit to the room. Once you've done what you need with that, you have to double back and undo it. This is the most complex puzzle in the game and the best use of Pinky. Clyde is unlocked after level 5 and is made for combat. Also, if he ever dies, you can immediately respawn him with no consequence. You spam the boo button, an attack that one-hit instant kills any regular enemies it may encounter and 2-shot spectral monsters. There is a super boo move that you use for puzzle progression, but these are surprisingly few and underdeveloped. Basically a different version of Pinky's ability, only less versatile. There is also a Talkman level, but this is a mash until you win type thing. This game also has 2 bosses. They are basically the same boss, only the second one has more phases, but also doesn't spawn enemies, so it is somehow weaker than the first boss. The bosses are easily the most difficult thing in the game and do utilize Pac-Man's moveset effectively, but are only really demanding in that what it is you need to hit isn't immediately obvious. For the actual levels themselves, there's a lot of waiting around. Ignoring how enemies are effectively time wasters, actual puzzle parts require time to be set in place, and things move slowly for the most part. Nothing is ever instant. A few times there will be enemies outside of dedicated combat encounters. These are largely unobtrusive, but the enemies known as the Snitterling is particularly obnoxious to deal with for how small, fast, and plentiful they are, though they fall off in usage after the first few levels.
Try and die, Pac-Man! Try and die! Your puny little brain couldn't possibly comprehend what I have in store for the world.
Mass destruction, the closure of all chocolate factories, and the banning of kittens, perhaps.
That's just phase 1. I've more stuff just waiting in the wings.
A third issue, and my biggest one, is the progression system. When I reference the progression system here, I'm referring to the game's unlocks, mainly the collectibles. This game is at the core a collectathon. There are collectibles everywhere of various types for you to find. The first problem with these is there is no in-game benefit to collecting anything. Previous games in the franchise let you access doors and chests if you collect all of a type of fruit, but that mechanic has been removed. Barring the collectible of the Galaxian, which lets you play a traditional Pac-Man maze and gives you an extra life if you win, you're collecting things for the sake of collecting things. The number of collectibles in this game is pretty high. containing anywhere from 32 individual collectibles on the low end, like level 1 Bot Boneyard and level 8 Gogeka Heights, to 52 individual collectibles like level 11 Cragstone Bridge. These collectibles are placed off camera, down cliffs, and generally in small places that you may not notice. Some of them are downright unfair. They are generally placed evenly across the level, having no bunches of one fruit, but this isn't the case in all levels. Furthermore, the levels are designed with a strong linear progression pushing you forward. You rarely trek over the same area twice, and previous areas are occasionally blocked off. It is incredibly easy to miss a collectible, and the game doesn't do a good job conveying anything involved with its progression system. It's actually easier to fully complete this game over its predecessor Pac-Man World 2, as pellets don't count for progression. It also removes the rewards of older Pac-Man games you unlocked that World 2 had. The only reward for collecting these things are these collector's cards that you can find in the menu. These collector's cards are pathetic, in that it's supposed to be character models and concept art, but doesn't make it full screen and obstructs portions with the card UI. Some of the concept art looks neat, which makes it a shame we don't have good quality renders of it. The biggest problem with these cards is they don't tell you how to get them. Because of how obscure this game is, it is weirdly difficult to look up this info online. No wiki or walkthrough I could find when I was pushing for completion had it listed. I had to buy a strategy guide to figure out what to do, which is why I can tell you this now. There are 60 collector's cards. 5 are related to finishing certain levels. 16 are collected by getting a high score on the levels. You do not need to get first. 34 are related to collecting all the collectibles in the game. If you get all of them, you'll get these. The last 5 have a unique condition that must be met. Throughout the game, you'll encounter various power pellets. These are generally placed around to speed up combat. Unannounced to you, the game counts how often you use these pellets and will unlock collector's cards if a threshold is met. Concept Art 3 used 20 chrome power pellets. Concept Art 4 used 40 electroshock power pellets, which you should get. Concept Art 5 used 60 power pellets, also basically guaranteed. Concept Art 6 used 40 ribbon loop power pellets, and Concept Art 7 used 50 super stomp pellets. There is no place in the game that tells you this is what you need to do, or how many you've used up to that point. Once the threshold is met, the game doesn't announce it, and the amount of pellets present in the game do not meet the threshold for one playthrough, and thus requires grinding. For this reason, the vast majority of people who have played this game have not truly completed it. It simply doesn't convey the information it needs to.
End of the road. Scenic anyway. Now, if only I could find a friendly ghost to tell me which way... Eureka! I guess.
Help me!
Help! Who?
I said, help me!
While we're at it, let's talk presentation. The main menu UI is horrendous, but that really doesn't matter all that much. The graphics are fine for their time and definitely benefits from the more cartoonish art direction. The big issue with this game's presentation is with the audio. The music in this game is awful, impressively so at times. It tends to have a really weak and solemn tone to it that for the most part doesn't fit with the brighter and more cartoonish setting of the world, though there are some songs that stand out. This is, of course, when the game has music at all, as you will find yourself in long periods of silence. This game would benefit greatly from more consistently looped music and a couple more intense tracks. Even when you do have music playing, the default sound balancing is completely screwed. Sound effects absolutely dominate the music, and the presence of loud and persistent sounds can even overtake the dialogue at times.
Now then, Pac-Man, I've located the final cipher, but there are some questions.
Do we have to talk now? I think they know I'm here.
Of course they do. All in the same
The main problem you face? Orson, I'm busy. Call back later. I've got a couple of worlds to save.
Pac-Man World 3 is a flawed game. It has problems. For the purposes of pointing fingers, the DS port is particularly egregious, with a low frame rate, awful draw distance, and glitches galore. All other versions of the game are effectively the same, with the PC port having some cutscenes that the other versions like the GameCube don't. Having said all of this, I still like Pac-Man World 3. For all its problems, it's still a solid 3D platformer with light collectathon exploration elements if you want to focus on that. Strangely enough, the best thing in this game is the story. The game has a decent amount of writing and is voice acted. For the most part, the story doesn't get in the way of the gameplay, cutscenes are skippable, and most dialogue is done over an intercom while you play. The writing itself is legitimately good, and the voice acting is weirdly incredible. Once you've heard Pac-Man speak, you will never be able to imagine any other voice than this one. It's shockingly fitting.
Why must you destroy my giant robot death machines? What did they ever do to you?
You're finished, Irwin. You should have used your death machines, world conquest plans, and rampaging insanity for good instead of evil.
It's finished, all right, Pac-Man. But only for one of us.
For you.
If you're a fan of 3D collectathon platformers and don't really mind a lower skill ceiling, I would recommend this game, but it's under those conditions specifically. For the general gamer, the biggest problem you'll have here is that it's boring.
My Gigatron! You destroyed my Gigatron! I love that Gigatron! I remember when it was just a Millitron!
You may be evil, but at least you love your giant robot.
How dare you pity me? Who do you think you are? And who are you calling giant? Don't make me summon my Terradecahydratron. My stepfather made me summon it once.
Give it up, Irwin. Conquering the universe never works for shrimpy megalomaniacs with mittens. It's a known thing.
Universe! That's the last straw. I've a good mind to have my army of loyalty-crazed minions disentomographic you. Twice.
Sorry, Irwin. Zero's my limit.